Good morning. My name is Jolene Christensen, and I will be your host today for the December legislative salary increase refresher. Thank you for joining us during this forum session. We know you're very busy, and we will use your time wisely. And now we'll go ahead and start with our agenda. We are going to first start with Natalie Brandon from DHRM. She will talk about the December legislative salary increase, who's eligible, wage-based rate increases, and then we'll talk to agencies who want to opt out of using the tool. For those agencies who want to utilize the tool, we'll do a deeper dive into that tool, help you understand about reviewing employee data, verifying business unit, addressing errors, and then we'll go into demonstrations on the details of how to utilize this. Before we end, we'll talk about ways to minimize correction tickets. This will be really important to ensure that your changes get in for this legislative salary increase. We'll end with some question and answers. And then at the end of this deck, we also provide additional supports with links out to our support materials and other resources. Again, we thank you all for joining us today. And now I'm going to pass it over to Natalie to talk more about this salary increase.
Thank you. So let's talk about what's in scope for this increase. So the approved budget, Chapter 1 of the 2023 Virginia Acts of Assembly in Special Session 1 did authorize a 2% salary increase effective December 10th, 2023 for eligible full and part-time classified and other salaried state employees. And that includes appointed, at-will, and faculty employees. Adjunct faculty at 2- and 4-year colleges and universities are also eligible for the 2% statewide increase. So I know that there were initially other compensation actions in the proposed legislation. I know that there have been questions that have come up around potential bonuses. Those things were not in the final approved budget. So this statewide increase only incorporates that 2% increase that I just mentioned. Agencies will have the option to evaluate, verify, and process their increases for eligible employees using the tool that we're going to discuss in this forum. And just as a reminder, we're not using that file utility process from previous years. We're using this Cardinal statewide legislative increase tool to facilitate the change. So who's eligible for the increase? First of all, salaried employees hired on or before September 10th, 2023, and who are still actively employed on at least December 10th, 2023. So the intent is for them to not only remain employed, but the expectation of a continuous employment. So for, I know that there are sometimes challenges with employees who plan to terminate on December 10th. The intent is for these to be 2% increases for employees who are going to be remaining with the Commonwealth. The system is right now currently configured to block salary increases based on that criteria. And of course, these things are outlined in the compensation memorandum that was communicated at the end of September. Employees that are covered by the Virginia Personnel Act must have achieved a performance rating of contributor or higher in order to be eligible to receive the increase. For those agencies who are, or employees who are not covered by the Virginia Personnel Act, the expectation is that those employees receive what would be the equivalent of the contributor rating, and that the agencies have confirmed that their employees meet that performance expectation. Employees that are not on unpaid leave, so paid leave employees on paid leave will be eligible to receive the increase at this time. However, they must be in the system in a paid leave status that does not have a missing expected return date or a missing overdue or an overdue return to work date. So if there's something that where the system can't actively reflect whether or not that employee truly is on an active paid status or an active employee, then the system is going to block those employees until some kind of correction is made for us to confirm that they're eligible for the increase. So included in the legislation was approval for a base rate increase for wage employees. They may be increased by up to 2% with an effective date no earlier than December 10th, 2023. Of course, the cost of increases for wage employees has to be borne by the existing funds appropriated to each agency. And so it is an agency's business decision on whether to facilitate increases for their wage staff. With that, the legislative salary increase tool that we're getting ready to walk through will not process increases for wage staff. Those will have to be entered either through doing an employee data upload interface using the job data mass upload template, or by manually keying into Cardinal using if you're manually keying, please ensure that you're using the action code of pay rate change and the reason for the FY24 December statewide increase, so that we'll be able to actively report out that your wage staff did receive this increase if that is your intent. So with that, I'm now going to turn this over to Sam to discuss the steps needed to actually facilitate processing the increases.
Thank you, Natalie. All right, so before we get started, I just want to speak to the fact that this form is a condensed version of the previous legislative salary increase form completed in August. Some of you may have been with us at that time and may be very familiar with this process. So we'll go over the opting out tool, and then after we complete those two slides, we'll go ahead and pause for some questions. And at that time, if you feel that your time would be best served exiting out of the forum and doing other things that you have to do, that would be a good time to do that. As Jolene has said, we will be sending out the deck as well as the recording after after this form. So you will have that to utilize as needed. But again, we'll pause at that time and give you an opportunity to make that decision for yourself. All right. So opting out of the tool. For agencies that will prefer to utilize one of the other methods for opting out of the tool, one of the methods that you see on your screen, they can do so by selecting or electing to opt out in the actual tool itself. And agencies that may want to elect to opt out may be ones that are already interfacing their data into Cardinal, or agencies that may not have any eligible employees. They may elect to opt out. It's definitely a business decision whether you're going to utilize the tool or not. But if you don't use the tool, if you opt out, it is still your responsibility to enter those salary increases into Cardinal for those eligible employees. And again, you can use one of these three methods: the interface if you are an interfacing agency, the job data mass upload template, or manually keying into Cardinal using the action of pay rate change and the reason code of fiscal year 24 December statewide increase. When you make the election to opt out, understand that you can, it does not impact your agency's ability to use the tool in future legislative increases. And if you are an agency that has access to multiple agencies, maybe you're a parent agency, and you are electing to opt out for multiple business units, you will have to opt out for each business unit on that actual page. And we'll see that when we open up the tool. Lastly, once you make the decision to opt out, your work in the tool will be complete, and then you won't be required to do any additional review or verification. However, you will still be required to enter your salary increases for your eligible employees. So I want to make sure that's clear. And opting out of the tool is pretty straightforward. You'll navigate to the actual legislative salary increase review page. You'll select the salary increase cycle, which will be fiscal year 2024, December, and the business unit that is electing to opt out. Then once on the page, you will see the summary statistics section, and there will be an opt-out checkbox. You'll select that checkbox and click on the Save button or the Save Only button right under the opt-out checkbox. These steps and this information is included in the job aid that you see highlighted below, the Using Legislative Salary Increase tool. So you don't have to memorize this, and also you'll have access to this deck. All right, so this is the portion where we'll pause for any questions. If there are no questions, we'll also give you an opportunity for those who know they're going to opt out and or have made the decision that they're familiar with this tool and don't need to sit in on this forum.
Yeah, so we have one question that's come in. Does this apply if we don't get the 2% increase? So it's from Virginia 529, if that helps.
Yeah, so if you are a independent agency and your employees do not fall under the legislative requirement to receive the 2% increase, then you may want to just go in and select opt out and know that the rest of the process will not impact you at this time.
All right, another question. To make sure I understand, if our agency chooses to opt out, that means we'll need to key the increases manually. So maybe Sam, you can go up 2 more slides. And we could go back. Your 3 options that Sam mentioned, she's going to circle them. If you're an interfacing agency, you can send them through the interface. If you want to use the job data mass upload template, you can utilize that. And we give details at the end of this presentation about that. And the last option, which may be ideal for you if you don't have very many to do, is to manually key them in. All right, we have a couple more questions coming in, but Sam, why don't you move forward and we'll distribute those questions to our panelists and hold them to the next question period.
Perfect. Okay. So if you are staying with us for the rest of the forum, we are going to dig into the legislative salary increase tool. We'll go over it at a high level of the different features, and then we'll dig down into what they mean and how you'll utilize them to process your increases. Okay, so the legislative salary increase review page, not much has changed with it. It's still located in the same place. But the only thing that has changed with this page is pretty much the instructions and the configuration based on the eligibility criteria provided by the memo. As you can see, this page is broken down into multiple sections. Again, we'll go over that in the next few slides. When you first open up the page, you will see an instructions section. And that is going to be something you want to pay attention to and read. In the instructions section is key information like your refresh schedule, verification deadlines, and different things that you'll need for processing this salary increase. We put it right in the tool, so you'll have it easily accessible. More about the instructions section. It's a bigger version. So you can see that there is the schedule and some detailed information in there. The instructions section may change depending on where we are in the cycle. So you want to read it every time you go into the tool. And if it is taking up a lot of real estate on your screen, you can always condense the instruction section by clicking on the caret, the down caret, to collapse it so that it's no longer in your way. Next section we're going to talk about is your summary statistics section. This is directly below the instruction section. And this is where the some summarized information about your agency will be located. It's also where you will select to opt out if that is what your agency is deciding to do. This section is a great place, a great starting place for when you are coming onto the page. You'll want to verify your total numbers of your employees, salaried employees, are accurate, as well as the other statistics that are available to you. If your total number is not reflecting what your agency suggests that you have, you can run that job data query in the query viewer section of Cardinal to review your population and compare it to what is in the legislative increase tool. Okay. And if you find there's a discrepancy with your information and maybe you need a correction that you guys cannot do at the agency level, you need to submit a ticket to VCCC so that we can get that done for you. All right, the next section we're going to discuss is the populate grid section. And this is used to set criteria for the list of employees that will be returned on the salaried employee level section of the page. You can also export an Excel spreadsheet listing your employees' demographics and information into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can easily manipulate the data and review your employees' information. You also have the filters that are available for you if you're a larger agency or you just want to deal with smaller lists of employees. You can utilize the filters, but keep in mind, if you want to see the full list, you need to leave all of the filters blank so that you can see all of your employees. All right. Next section. This is at the bottom of the page, if you remember from the previous slides. This is the salaried employee level section, and it's also known as the grid. This is where you will view an online list of your employees when you populate the grid in the populate grid section. Okay. Let me see. You can use the filters in the populate grid section to make the list a little bit more manageable, or leave the filters blank to see the full population. And the grid display will only allow for agencies to see up to 8,000 employees. So if you're a very large agency, you may want to export your list to Excel so you can review your entire population. And if, as you know, with Excel, you can manipulate the filters on the spreadsheet itself. Again, the grid section or the spreadsheet will be how you'll review your entire population, make sure that their data is accurate, salary is correct as is, and review any system blocks and system notes that are indicating that the employee will not receive the salary increase, and determine whether you need to make a correction to their data because maybe they are eligible and shouldn't be blocked, or confirm that that block is accurate as is. Also in this section, you will have an opportunity to determine any employees that may need to be blocked. Maybe there's outstanding data that hasn't been keyed into the Cardinal, but you know that employee will not be eligible for the increase. That this is your opportunity to make those decisions. All right. So let's talk about reviewing employee data in a little bit more detail. All right, so going back to the populate grid section versus importing, or exporting, I'm sorry, exporting to Excel. After agencies validate your totals in the summary statistics section, you'll want to use this section to generate your full list of employees, right? So when you first come onto the page, you won't see a list of employees until you select the populate grid button, and that is where you will see your population display. And the filters are there for you to utilize, right? You can see employees by department, salary admin plan, or you can look at a specific employee if you choose to do so. You can also look at all of the employees that are being blocked by the system and review that data as needed. All right. Once you populate your grid, you'll see the salaried employee level section display with your employees, your population. And in that section, there are 3 tabs. There's a summary tab, a details tab, and a load errors tab. The summary tab is the default, right? And that is where you'll see a summarized version of your salaried employees information, some key information to help you make decisions. And then in the details tab, that will display a little bit more information for you, so you can review your employees listed in your grid. In that specific section, you'll see their current salary as well as what their new salary will be after the increased loads and the percentage of the increase. In the next tab that we're going to talk about is the load errors tab. This specific tab, you won't see it when you first log into the tool. It does not display until after the increases have been loaded. And that is the tab that you will want to review after the salary increases are processed on December 10th. And you'll use that tab to identify any employees that did not process and determine if you need to take action to manually key or enter their salary increase, or confirm that that was what was expected. All right. Now, we talked about how the system has been configured to automatically block employees who are deemed ineligible in accordance with the memorandum. And what we mean is that the system will actually display a blocked message in the system blocked column. And in the system notes, it will explain why the system has elected to block the employee. So like in this example, you see we have blocked shown for a continuous state service date that is missing for an employee. You'll want to review this section and make sure that if there's, that the employee shouldn't be blocked for that specific reason, you'll want to navigate to the employee's job record, and look, see if they do have a continuous state service date in their field. More than likely they don't. So you'll want to take action to update that particular field, and check back once the system has been refreshed via the refresh schedule to make sure that that block has been removed from that particular employee. So you want to pay attention to the final refresh schedule because any changes that are made after that December 5th date at 8 p.m. will not impact the processing of the salary increase. Therefore, they will need to be entered manually by the agency. Each system block comes with a corresponding system note. We have a table that describes the system notes and what is causing that note to display. And this table would be good for you to pull out of the deck and keep handy as you're reviewing your data. So one of the system notes that you may see is for an employee that was hired after September 10th. And that's because their continuous state service date field displays September 10th. And per the memorandum, they would not be eligible for the increase. I won't go through all of them, as you guys can read, but this is here for you to refer back to if you need to. All right, there are some non-blocking system notes. What does that mean? That means that you see a note next to employees on an employee's row, but the column doesn't display as blocked. Sometimes you will see that, and that means that the employee is not blocked. However, there is an issue with their data, and which may cause the increase not to load for that employee. It'll cause them to error out, and they'll display on the errors tab. You'll need to address those system notes as part of your review. And we have some system notes below here in this chart that you may see when you go into the tool, what's causing that system note and the impact of that particular note to help you make decisions on how to fix your data. I'm going to point out that last note for the VPA employee and missing performance. If you see that display in the system notes column, you'll know that the cause is that their fiscal year 23 performance rating is missing for the employee that is VPA eligible or in a VPA eligible position. The system will not be able to determine the employee's performance eligibility. So it does not stop the increase from loading, but that means that if your employee is not eligible, you may need to take action on the employee so that you don't have to submit a ticket into VCC getting that increase corrected. All right, so we talked about how the system will automatically block, but agencies do have the ability to put a manual block on an individual employee in case they determine that they maybe need to manually key the increase, or they're not sure if the employee is going to be eligible. For whatever reason, you can use the agency block column and add a comment in the agency comments column explaining why the employee is not going to be included in the automated process. And just a little note explaining that. Some examples of when you would utilize this feature would be if a performance rating of below contributor or on leave has not been entered into Cardinal, and you don't have the chance to hurry up and get that entered. Possibly a faculty employee who should receive an increase at a later date and time. You can go ahead and block that employee. Or possibly you have an employee who is going to be, you're expecting them to term, but they have not been terminated in Cardinal. You may want to elect to block that employee so that you can terminate them at a later date. You want to take action on the system blocks and the system and the agency blocks as per this refresh schedule, right? You're going to validate your data and come back into the tool after the refresh to make sure that the system has, you know, the changes have reflected into the system and that your employee is no longer impacted by the block, for example. We are going to have 4 refreshes and then a final refresh. And you want to adhere to these refresh schedules, again, because any changes made after the final refresh will not remove any system blocks and will possibly cause the increase to fail. Okay, so you have up until December 5th between 8 p.m. and 11:59 p.m. to make those necessary changes.
Until 8 p.m. Right, because you run the refresh. So you have, I think maybe earlier we might have said 8 a.m. We meant to say 8 p.m. So we want to make that correction. That will go on, that correction will be done on the recording. But if you don't make those changes by 8 p.m., it's done. And we recommend that you really try to make those changes before, so you see it reflected in the second or third or fourth refresh. Please don't wait till the end.
Yes. Good point. Thank you, Joanne. All right. So verifying your business unit. After the final refresh runs on December 5th, you will see a new checkbox appear on the legislative increase tool. And that is the highlighted checkbox, the checkbox highlighted in red, the verified checkbox. And that is what you are going to check after you have completed your final review of your data and taken action on your employees. And that indicates to Cardinal that you have confirmed your data, your population, and you are good to go for processing, for the automated processing. If you happen to verify prematurely, you can always uncheck the box and continue your review process, and then come back and check the box again once you have, you're ready to verify. The only business units that have been verified will have the pay increase loaded on their employee's job record. So if you do not verify, you will not, your data will not process automatically. And we do have our deadline to verify, that is December 7th at 12 p.m. So you'll want to make sure that you review your data timely and so elect verified so that you can process your increase. One note I want to point out that if your agency does elect to opt out, you will not be expected to verify. So as we said previously, opting out once you have checked that box and saved your election, there's nothing else that you need to do within the tool itself. All right, Cardinal processes pay increases. So on December 9th, which is a Saturday, we will load the pay change actions for all the verified business units. So all the business units that have elected or selected that verified checkbox. The transactions will appear on the employee's job records with an effective date of December 10th. The action will be a pay rate change, and the reason will be the fiscal year 24 December statewide increase. Agencies will have the ability to review their transactions and address any employees that erred out or any transactions that did not process on the Monday, December 11th, following the load of the data. If you do have employees who have erred out, but they should have received the increase, that would be a great time to manually process that increase, whether it's via keying manually in Cardinal or submitting an upload or an interface. And you'll have from December 11th to December 14th to impact the next pay period for the employee. Again, these must be completed prior to the HR data freeze, so you want to make sure you're adhering to that schedule, which is at 1 p.m. on Friday, December 15th. For our agencies who have not opted out, who are processing their salary increase via the legislative increase tool, we do ask that you refrain from making any job data changes on Saturday, December 9th, while we're processing these increases, so that we don't have any data conflict errors when we go ahead and process the load. All right, steps for checking for and addressing errors. Again, beginning the morning of Monday, December 11th, you'll go onto the tool, you'll see your load errors tab display. And on the right-hand side, you'll see an error message that explains why that transaction, that specific transaction has failed to load. You can select the errors only checkbox in the populate grid section, so you can see only the errors, or leave it unchecked and see your total population. If you do not have any errors, right, all of your employees processed as expected, you'll see the process failed section will display a 0, and your load errors tab will not display. Again, if an employee should have received an increase and did not, you'll need to manually add that pay rate change for the employee. And if there is an issue with you manually adding it yourself, you can process or submit a ticket to VCCC for Cardinal to assist. Or you can contact DHRM, iHelp, for any increases that are specifically outside of the employee's pay band. You can go directly to them. All right, so now is demo time. So we'll go ahead and look at our staging or our testing environment, so you guys can see what the legislative increase page looks like. So let me go ahead and take down my slide and sign in.
So while Sam's navigating there, I'm going to ask our panelists if they had any questions that they answered that they'd like to call out to our group on the phone. Maybe anything about loading evals, when those evals are supposed to be in, mass uploads.
So Sam just gave the updates on when the system's going to refresh. So I would encourage everyone to make sure that their performance ratings are in the system prior to those refresh date periods, so that their employees are accurately reflected and eligible to receive the increase.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So hopefully I didn't navigate too fast, but the navigation is in the deck. Also right here, it's menu, workforce administration, job information, and then the legislative salary increase section. You only see one of these icons, but the icon that you want is the review icon. Okay. Once on this page, this is the search page. This is where you'll select the salary increase cycle. You only see the one that is available right now. And if you're an agency that has access to multiple business units, you'll see all of the business units that you have access to. Since I'm signed under my name, I will go ahead and type in my business unit. Oops. Wrong business unit. Okay. And then you'll select search and the page will open. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger So when you first get on the page, you'll see the instructions. It should be open and available for you to read. Please review that. We highly recommend you review it so you know what's going on and where we are in the process, okay? Again, you'll have access to the summary statistics section where you want to verify your totals. Make sure that your population is accurately reflected in the tool. Populate grid section. This is your filter section where you will filter or not filter, right? Leave blank for all, your population and populate your grid, which will display in this salaried employee level section. So for this example, we have masked the data. So I'll go ahead and populate the grid. Just so you can see what it looks like. All right. So we have a small agency. We have a few blocks and some system notes for some employees. All right, this new employee down here at the bottom is missing a continuous state service date, and their citizenship status is missing from the system. We also have Kermit the Frog, who is missing who is a VPA employee, and they're missing their performance rating for the year. We have Oscar, who's out on an unpaid leave. They're also a VPA employee and missing performance rating. Then we have Bert Ernie, who is missing an expected return date. They must be out on leave, maybe a short-term disability. They're also a VPA employee and missing their performance rating. Okay, but these are blocked. Again, some of these are not blocked because that specific data issue does not cause the automatic block. But you still want to go ahead and make any corrections to any missing pieces of data. You'll see you have your agency block section. This is where you'll select whether you want to block an employee and write a comment. Something like that. And guess that's probably all I can say about the agency block and agency comments. It's pretty self-explanatory. Again, we have our details tab, so I'll show you what that looks like. It's a little bit more information about your specific employees. You go down the slide, the scroll bar at the bottom to see the whole, all of the information that is displayed. And if you want to see this in a Excel spreadsheet, you'll select the Export to Excel button, and it will download an Excel spreadsheet right onto your computer. I've downloaded this a little ahead of time, just so I can make sure that there's no issues, but this is how the Excel spreadsheet will look for you. So some people may want to utilize this, maybe to add some filters and manipulate their population. Okay, so you're going to review your data and make any necessary changes. So let's take a look at our new employee. They're missing a citizenship, right? We don't want them to be blocked. So this is your opportunity. Maybe you have one HR admin that is taking on a specific population of your employees, of your total population, and you provide them with the information that they need to go ahead and make the data corrections. So you can go into the system when you are ready to correct the data. Oops. And for citizenship, that lives in the Workforce Administration section under personal information. And for that specific employee, you would want to go ahead and enter their citizenship information. So let me grab their employee ID. or take a look at their citizenship record to confirm, oh, it is missing. Okay. There is a job aid for citizenship. There's job aid pretty much for everything. So if you're not familiar with entering citizenship in Cardinal, don't worry, you can search the Cardinal Project website for that particular job aid that gives you step-by-step instructions. Okay. Also, our new employee is missing a continuous state service date. So we can go ahead and take care of that as well. And the continuous state service date is located on the job record. So let me actually navigate fully for those who are not familiar with Cardinal. And then I will review the job record, right? So continuous state service date is on the employment data page. And I verify that continuous state service date is missing. So what I want to do is make a correction to this record, which I'll do here. Just to get that data in so it's no longer blocking the employee's increase. Okay. So you are going to want to do that for all employees that have issues with their data that are possibly being blocked, and they shouldn't be, right? They're just missing a piece of data that should be in the system. Okay. You'll take action, and then when the system completes a refresh, that is when you're going to see the changes reflected in the tool. Okay, it does not automatically update the tool. It has to, that's why we have the refresh schedule. So this will be a good time to pause. We'll run the refresh in the background and also the verification toggle so that you guys can see what that looks like and see the changes that I made, how they'll remove the actual block from that particular employee. So let's go ahead and I'll log out so that refresh can process. Oops, what changes did I make? And if we have any questions, I guess this will be a good time to take any questions.
Great. Why don't you run back up to slide 22, because I think that's a really important slide for everybody to understand. You know, everybody who's on this phone is really busy for the next 3 weeks between refresh cycle. You have pretty much everybody on this call is invited to a forum on Thursday morning about transfers. So the first refresh will happen on Thursday the 16th. Ideally, you're going to get your performance ratings in prior to that first refresh, but you have several cycles to try to get that in so that your employees will be considered by the system, having that information in the system. By the time you get to the third and fourth refresh, if you're attending the DHRM conference downtown Richmond, you're going to be pulled in many different directions. So possibly don't wait until that third and fourth refresh to go through your data, because you're going to be listening and seeing some outstanding presentations those 2 days. So just a consideration for you all. And then again, that final refresh, everything has to happen prior to that refresh, but because it is the final refresh, you won't have an opportunity to go back in and see if what you did made the change as you expected it to. So there's no room for error at that point. So we want you to, update your data review your data. We had a recommendation for some queries earlier in some slides to make sure you do that, or we did that a little bit later. Can't remember, Sam.
Both. We did discuss them earlier.
Okay, great. We'll review those at the end when we go through resources. And then finally, ask your questions early. Don't wait till the last minute to ask your iHelp questions or to submit a ticket to BCCC.
Good point. Okay. All right. Seems like our refresh has complete. So we will go on to your final review and verifying your data. Let me bring this down. All right, so I'll go ahead and log back in. So once a refresh has occurred, right, you're going to log back in and navigate to the legislative salary increase page. So you can review your data and make sure that your changes impacted the employee as expected. Again, your employees or your population is not going to display until you populate your grid. And make note that the verify checkbox displays now, so we can select that once we have confirmed that our data is accurate or as expected. So I populated my grid, and if you've noticed, the changes that we've made on our new employee are reflected. This employee is no longer blocked from receiving the increase as expected. So that's how the refreshes work, okay? You will not see this change until the refresh has occurred and the tool, basically the tool's data has been refreshed with the changes. So once you are ready to verify your data so that you're letting Cardinal know you're good to go, you're ready to process your increases, you'll click on your checkbox, your verified checkbox, and you can select the Save Only button here at the top or at the very bottom, the Save blue Save button. Either or works. One thing I want to note, if you did block an employee, let's say we uncheck this because we've checked it too early, and we decide we want to block and put an agency block on an employee that should not receive the increase. Obviously, we won't need to do it on this one, but let's say this Virginia is not eligible. We can add that information here. Again, once you add an agency block and agency comments, you'll need to save that information. So you'll go through, add your agency blocks and comments as needed, verify your data. And once you're ready, you'll select the verified checkbox and save. If you do add agency blocks early on in the refresh schedule or anywhere in the refresh schedule, once you save and you navigate away from the tool, these agency blocks will remain until you remove them, okay? So that's one thing I want to point out. The only thing that will be removed is any system blocks or system notes once you have updated the information in Cardinal to reflect the changes needed, okay? All right. So again, you'll select your verified checkbox, and from that point, you will be done until we've loaded the data. And then on December 11th, you'll come back in, you'll see a load errors tab if you had any errors. If you did not, it will not display for your agency. And you'll select that specific tab and review your errors for the employees that did not process. And then at that time, you have until from the 11th to I think the 14th to make the updates in Cardinal as needed. Or process the increases that did not process. All right, so that is enough of that. We'll go back into the deck. So let's talk about ways to minimize correction tickets. You have this tool where you can block or manually add blocks to employees that maybe need some data correction and aren't eligible. Or you have system blocks that are automatically blocking employees based on the criteria that is indicated in the memorandum that was shared by DHRM. One of the things we put together was a lessons learned from the last statewide increase to help you avoid any or minimize the need for correction tickets. Okay, some corrections we can avoid, but we can avoid ones if we understand what's going to cause the tool to, or what's going to cause us not to be able to process an increase, right? One cardinal tip we want to point out is that you have access to queries and reports that you can use to analyze your data and compare it to what's in the tool, as well as just to review and see, okay, what's causing this employee to be blocked if they shouldn't be blocked, okay? One of those resources is your job data query. You also have performance rating report that you can run to make sure that your ratings are entered in properly. So we have listed here, we have about 3 examples of different scenarios that may cause you to, well, 3 scenarios that you might want to think about. The first example is when an employee is on an approved paid leave status and the legislative salary increase cannot be applied until the return from leave or leave extension. You want to keep effective dating rules in mind, okay? So if that employee is expected to return on December 12th from leave, you'll want to make sure that the increase processes because that effective date is December 10th. And then you'll go ahead and enter the return from leave. So you want to hold off on entering that return from leave until after the process or until after the increase is keyed. Example 2 is about avoiding retroactive transactions by ensuring that your employee's job data is up to date prior to December 10th. And we did spell out a best practice. You'll want to reach out to your supervisors requesting employment resignations and extended leave statuses so that they can be entered timely to avoid having to submit a ticket to have Cardinal enter in Cardinal post-production support to enter in that retroactive transaction, right? So if the employee is supposed to go on leave on December 5th and that has not been keyed, but the salary increase transaction processes, now you'll have to submit that ticket so that we can insert that row for you. But if you take action prior to us processing the increase, there won't be a need for a correction ticket. Example 3 is, let's say you have a position data update. Most position data updates will create a transaction row on that employee's or incumbent's job record, and will block any transactions that should have come before that weren't keyed already, okay? So we wanted to bring that to your attention so that you can avoid having to retroactively enter or submit a ticket for a retro transaction to be entered because you did submit a position update in Cardinal, okay? And I'll just call out this note down here. Cardinal post-production support, HR, response time may be delayed following the statewide salary increase due to an expected higher ticket volume. Therefore, you want to make sure that you submit your tickets as soon as possible, right? We'll do our best to get them out timely, but we do have to adhere to that payroll schedule and the data freezes as well. And just to call out, we will be prioritizing any pay impacting correction tickets over any other tickets. All right, with that being said, it's now time for any additional questions. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jolene.
I think we have some questions in with the panelists right now. If you want to take a look at that tab, are there any questions you want to call out specifically while you're answering any remaining questions? Go ahead, Kelly.
So I have one question asking why citizenship and LWAT are being blocked by the system. Citizenship is a required field for all PeopleSoft processing in HCM. If the field is blank and we process an interface or a program file or program like this legislative tool, those will fail anyway. So that is PeopleSoft delivered functionality. And then the leave without pay, this is a standard practice. DHRM requires those to be blocked until the employee returns from leave without pay. And those are being blocked due to custom configuration per the requirements. Now,
So
you want to address that?
Yeah, so leave without pay, they're being blocked because one of the eligibility requirements for receiving the increase is that the employee either needs to be active or in an approved paid leave status. So if they are on leave without pay, they do not meet the eligibility requirements until they actually either return to work or return to paid leave. So that's part of what Sam was trying to communicate. If that data is inaccurate, then it needs to be updated so that the employee receives the increase timely.
Thank you, Natalie. Any other questions we have?
I don't see anything else that we'll continue to answer any remaining questions online and circle back at the end. But Natalie, go ahead.
I was going to ask Sam if you would revisit. I have a few questions tied to just the return from leave and when to key that. So we may want to just, if you want to just review that step again.
Oh. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that specific slide. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so it depends, right? Your effective date is the important key in this scenario. Return from leave. If the employee is returning from leave prior to December 10th, then you want to go ahead and get that keyed in, okay? If they are returning after December 10th, you want to hold off from submitting that return from leave until after you've processed the December 10th pay rate change. And if we have an interfacing agencies on the line, right, maybe you did not submit the December 10th increase, or maybe it failed in the interface file, you want to take a look at those employees' job records to confirm that those increases have processed successfully, take action on any employees that did not process, and then key your return from leave if it's supposed to be, or if the employee returns effective after the December 10th increase. Okay, effective dating rules are important in Cardinal. If you haven't already learned that you cannot insert rows or historical rows behind rows in Cardinal on either the job record or the position record. So you want to make sure that you're entering your transactions in chronological order as they should occur. Hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions?
Not right now. There are a few out with our panelists, but let's go ahead and move forward with resources. Sam.
Sure. So we do have some additional support, and I'll go ahead and let Jolene go ahead over this with you.
So at the end of these forums, we like to link all the things that we believe are applicable to this process. The first and foremost is the DHRM resource memo that came out in early October. That links not only to the comp memo, but they have a page up on DHRM that has some FAQs, salary structure, and then it also links to our job aid on how to use the legislative salary increase tool. If you just need a brush up of how to get through a page, this is our recommendation. Use this job aid for the step-by-step process of how to use the tool and how we went through all of these processes today. Queries that we either highlighted today or we believe are really important for you checking on your data and ensuring that it's where it needs to be before you get through all of these refreshes are linked here. The query menu is right under queries, and then we've outlined the personal data, job query, and the legislative salary increase query. If you want more information about these queries, you can always go out to the reports catalog, but we recommend that you run these and see where your data's at. There are a couple of reports, including leave of absence report and the performance rating report at the bottom. And if you don't often run queries or reports and you feel like you need some additional support at the bottom, we've linked the job aid on how to run a query and how to run a report for, again, a step-by-step view of how to walk through setting up a run control or running those individual pieces. Before we send out an update, we will link the evaluation process job aid on here as well, because we've had a couple of questions come in to, as a reminder of the path or what the process is. We'll add this to this page so you all have it in hand and can utilize it before we get into the first couple of refreshes. On the next slide is information about upload support. Some of you are very familiar on where these templates are located. We have linked the page on the Cardinal website for the performance rating mass upload template and the job data mass upload template. As a reminder, always go out and download the latest. We are constantly updating these templates. We want to make sure you have the last version, so you'll want to go into that page and download that last template. There are instructions on the front of each of those templates. Please read through those instructions to ensure that you know how to utilize the upload template. And then there's a job aid on how to utilize a mass upload in a more generic sense. And what you can upload versus what needs to be passed to DHRM. If you haven't looked at that before, we recommend utilizing that job aid as well. From an additional support perspective, one of the things that we always say is coordinate internally within your agency. One of the things you need to ensure is who is responsible for this process, especially if you have a larger team. So we recommend, as HR administrators or, with your HR director, huddle and figure out responsibilities. Any agency-specific HR policies and procedures. As always, our VCCC help desk is utilized for all Cardinal tickets in the subject, and always include Cardinal, so it's automatically routed to us, and a brief summary for routing. So in this case, you might put something like, I have a question on the legislative salary increase tool, or I have a question on performance ratings. It helps us figure out where your question needs to be routed internally in our team. Within the email that you're sending to VCCC, and we really recommend an email more than a call, put detailed information about your issue, functional area page, a screenshot in particular, and always include a name, email address, and your best contact phone number. Down at the bottom, we've included links for iHelp and compensation should you have any of those questions. And as we mentioned earlier, please don't delay in asking your questions so that we can ensure that they're answered before the deadline. Are there any additional outstanding questions that remain that we want to address? We thank you for your time and attention. We know you're really busy this time of year and you have a lot of balls in the air, and we're grateful for the time that you've spent with us this morning.
Yes, thank you again for your attention and congratulations on your 2% increase.
Thanks to everybody.